Thank you very much, and I want to begin by thanking Teresa for inviting me back. I didn't really understand anything she said when she was introducing me, but I did pick up enough from that to understand that she was talking about the fact that I'd been here about 12 months ago, which indeed I was, and it's just such a pleasure to be back here. My partner is actually flying over, hopefully, the ash cloud being playing its part. In a couple of days' time, I'm going to have a holiday here, so it's just a terrific experience to be back here. In 1974, North American art educator Brent Wilson published a short article about a boy who was spending much of his spare time drawing cartoons derived from his extensive collection of Marvel comic books. 10-year-old J.C. Holtz was drawing elaborate narrative adventures about superheroes and dealing with the themes such as good and evil, the triumph of the good, and metamorphosis. Most of his female figures were represented being rescued by male superheroes, a point to which I will return. Using a term that's recently gained some currency, J.C. Holtz was a prosumer. Now, the word prosumer is created by contracting either the word professional with the word consumer, or contracting the word producer with the word consumer. It means either a professional consumer, someone who draws upon or consumes mass media in order to produce their own professional work, or it means anyone, including people without any kind of training, like children, who consume and produce, consume the media and produce something as a consequence. Now, of course, in referring to young people, I'm going to be primarily using the term in the sense of a producer-consumer. But young people on the net are often using professional equipment. Some have used Final Cut Pro, which is a program used for editing Hollywood films. So these two meanings can blur. Now, the word prosumer was first coined by the futurologist Alvin Toffler in 1980, but he had conceived of the general idea in the early 70s. In what now looks like a highly prescient statement, he predicted that with the proliferation of electronic technologies, the role of producers and consumers would merge, they would blur. Young prosumers recycle pre-existing cultural forms by reworking them according to their own dispositions and predispositions. They go beyond what's been called creative media consumption, in which children create their own readings of the media that undercut intended meanings. Sometimes this is called a negotiated reading of the media. Young prosumers go further. Prosumers engage in what the Wilsons call cultural recycling, what Henry Jenkins calls textual poaching. These children not only read images according to their own lights, but drawing upon the mass media, they produce work of their own, in their own time, of their own accord. Young prosumers, in fact, have a very long history. Many grow up to be artists. Some years ago, I studied the biographies and autobiographies of 35 children, most of whom grew up to be artists. Some of these are still famous. Some have been completely forgotten, but they were famous in their day. And we can speculate about the sources from which they drew on the basis of what they drew. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples here, where we can see quite clearly that these children are drawing from popular sources of various kinds. Now, Wilson's 1974 article proved a very significant break with the view of children as creative, in the sense of children being, of creativity being something that was innate. And a significant break with art education that was founded on so-called creative self-expression. It led, albeit circuitously, to the movement within US art education and certainly elsewhere of visual culture. For Wilson, meeting J.C. Holtz initiated a new and ever-evolving research agenda. Wilson went on to focus on the phenomena originating in Japan, but very much elsewhere now, of doujinshi. And you probably know that doujinshi are comic books produced by youth in response to manga comic books. Manga often have over 1,000 pages, and they have a readership in the millions, such that they constitute a major cultural site. But instead of just reading these publications, young people have often responded by creating their own. And with an estimated 50,000 doujinshi clubs or circles in Japan alone, their own fairs, their own celebrity artists, this has become a major cultural site. If you like, this is mass prosumption. Here's an English example. And my Portuguese come Spanish is so bad, I'm not sure whether this is Spanish or Portuguese. I think it's Spanish. I was looking for a Portuguese example. I bet they're out there, but I just couldn't find one. Since Wilson's 1974 article, others have contributed their own case studies of individual young prosumers, including my own. For me, reading Wilson's early article coincided with meeting 9-year-old Eugene Lee. Eugene was drawing superhero narratives involving characters of his own invention. For example, the Green Condor, a duck. Although in real life, a real estate agent, fighting a never-ending battle against an assortment of unlikely villains. Yet Eugene's mostly favoured story is about a duo of superheroes called Hen Man and Chicken, as here. Hen Man, a caped and masked rooster, was ably assisted by his sidekick Chicken. And in conventional comic strip format, with drawings, word and thought balloons, as well as visual sound effects, Hen Man and Chicken hunted down a cast of bizarre characters, again of Eugene's invention. The latter included Pearl One, who, in robbing banks, would disguise herself as a ball of wool. There was Weatherman, who could control the weather. And Roderick Volume, seen here, who stole people's voices. These stories usually